please. So our next session is going to look specifically at the issue of climate change and what companies are doing across the country to address that real fundamental problem. And what we want to make the connection with here is, as Fran has described, there's a great business opportunity also. And in order to address this problem, we need businesses to be involved. And in many cases, businesses have been on the forefront of finding solutions, and they've taken action, sometimes irregardless of what policies exist. Not to deny that policy is important, but in many cases, companies have led. So we're going to have a conversation around what companies are doing, but also what neighborhoods and communities are doing, and how climate change is affecting communities of color and poor communities, urban and rural communities across this country. So let me introduce our two speakers. First, Danielle Deane, here to my left. Danielle is the Director of Energy, and she runs the Energy and Environment Program for the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies in Washington, D.C., and she's particularly focused on engaging the African American community in issues of climate change. Danielle, before being with the Joint Center, worked with the Hewlett Foundation for a number of years. And we also then have, to my far, far left, not that far, is Faith Taylor. And Faith is the Director of Sustainability for the Wyndham Group worldwide, and Wyndham is a hospitality company, as you all probably know. And in 2011, Newsweek ranked Wyndham as within the 100 greenest companies in the country. So Faith began her work there in 2006 and has built out a sustainability practice within Wyndham for the past 6 years now. So this is a conversation between the two of you, and I'll turn it over to you, and thank you both.
Well, I'm very happy to be here today, and it has been a journey 6 years ago where I had the opportunity to start this program from scratch. My CEO, we spun off from a larger company called Cendent, and at that time, he was concerned about developing a company and culture. I think we heard that earlier today. And I had the opportunity to talk with him because actually my son at that time, Jordan, had me go see the movie An Inconvenient Truth. And he came home one weekend and told my husband and I, you absolutely must see this movie. So when I saw it, I had been doing a lot of work with the consumer, saw the greening trend with the lifestyle of health and sustainability, $400 billion market growing. And I said, you know what? Our company has to do this when we're spinning off. So I actually had the opportunity to talk with my chairman, Stephen Holmes, and said, you have to start this. We had a conversation. He's like, I'm concerned about the company. We're starting, I'm spinning off. And I said, look, this is going to be strategic to what you need to do to make this company one that's going to be profitable and sustainable. Well, he came back to me 4 weeks later and said, yeah, why'd you start that? In addition to what you do today? And I was like, okay. So I did, and it was a grassroots organization. So we have about 28,000 employees. We have over 50 brands and 100,000 sites around the world in 100 countries. And I was fortunate that I had been working on a project that was global. And I knew a lot of people in my organization who were doing green things before it was popular. And we started. I put together a strategic plan, but it was more about the people. And I think when we talked about the culture and the people, this is part of our company's culture. And there were people like Hans in Landau Green Parks in the Netherlands, who's been, doing things within their organization, to in Seattle, Sam Buckingham with the Timeshare Group. And I knew what they were doing. I said, you guys, let's do this together. So we started. What's been an amazing journey is that with the strategies and the plans and implementing the program, it really has grown. And when we talk about triple bottom line, it's true. people, planet, and profits, and we are all about what's happening with our consumer, our shareholders, but it is responsible business and it's making sense. We are delivering bottom line benefits to our company. But what's even more surprising is what's happening on Wall Street. So we've had Goldman Sachs, Bloomberg look at our company not only from the stock valuation, but what is happening with their environmental, social governance. And they are actually rating that. And they look at what they call ESG, environmental social governance, and they're starting to score companies and say, how are you rating versus another company in your industry? And what I found was that rating with Dow Jones or with Goldman, they found that those companies that do well in this space do well overall as a company and have higher valuations and perform better. So it makes sense. It works. And as it's progressed, it continues to grow. I look at our journey as just begun. We still have a long ways to go. The accolades are great. But really, I like what Fran said. There's only one planet. There's no what we call planet B. There's no option B. We only have here where we live today. And so I look at, we have a challenge. I mean, when you look at pollution, when you look at 7 billion people and we're using 1.5 times the amount of resources, but I am confident that we have the technological capability and sustainable options to have a solution. So our company is on the side where I said we're proactively working with our suppliers, our customers, our consumers, our employees, but it just makes sense over and over again. And so really this journey in my mind is just beginning. We still have a long ways to go, but I'm proud to be able to sit here today, which I never would have told you I'd be sitting here today, doing this job and actually helping to lead in this industry. So that's just a little bit about our story.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for being here today, and special thanks as well to the Sustainable Business Council for the work that they're doing. I'm from the Caribbean originally, and I just want to share how I got into this a little bit. I grew up and my education was funded by a lot of oil money. Trinidad and Tobago was incredibly wealthy, not because of tourism like a lot of other Caribbean countries, but because we happen to have, right off the coast of Venezuela, a lot of oil. And one of our most famous instruments, the only new instrument of the last century, the steel band. Many of you have heard of it. That's sort of associated with, when you go on your beach vacation. Those were the guys after they got off working on the rigs and had those old steel drums, started banging on it, and it became an advanced instrument that's now, played all over Europe and other places, and in the U.S. as well. Oil drums. And so we also looked around, though, and saw that, we'd go to the beach in the summer and come home, and there'd be these little pieces of tar on our skin, and as kids, we'd run around and be like, you got some of that on your skin. And you get older and you realize, that stuff coming from those oil rigs offshore. And I had to reconcile for myself that we had to figure out a world, and that's what everyone here is trying to do, where we can get the benefits that come from industry, that come from the power that we need, but figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't wreck the things that we love and wreck our health. And that power is a lot of what I do. And then when I came to the United States and also started learning more about what was happening, internationally, I won't go through all the statistics with you, but we all know that for almost any pollution issue you talk about, if you're poor, it sucks even worse than if you're wealthy. In most cases, there are some exceptions. And also, even when you control for income, if you happen to be in a group that's a minority, you tend to be more in a community that's got more trash, more this, more whatever in it. And so this is an issue that's of particular concern to African Americans and other communities of color, which sometimes doesn't come across in the mainstream media. Sometimes what you see is, could we not bother about this environmental stuff because we are we just need those jobs, right? And I just know so many amazing activists across the country that come home after their day job and then are trying to figure out how to clean up their communities. And so there are a lot of those folks out there. And in essence, what the Joint Center is trying to do is make more visible not just those problems, but those solutions. I often have a problem when I hear just about all the problems and all the suffering and not the way in which people are empowering themselves to address those concerns. Let me tell you a little bit about how we're doing that. A little bit about the Joint Center. 42 years old, and we're a leading think tank in DC, and we're the nation's leading black think tank. The only think tank in DC with a specific focus a specific focus on issues of concern to communities of color. Where we try our best to be nonpartisan. Donna Brazil is on our board, and former Republican Congressman J.C. Watts is also on our board as well. We're really well known for our work on health and media, and our work on energy, climate, and environment was launched in 2008. And the Joint Center was formed to be the go-to think tank when it was formed in 1970 for black elected leaders across the country. And if we think about that time, they knew that with blacks getting the right to vote and much more political power, there would be this significant scale up in the number of black mayors, like the mayor of Charlotte, and black elected leaders across the country. And they wanted their place to go to make sure that they could understand what was happening in their communities, even as they tried to serve everyone else. So in 2008, then Senator Barack Obama was in an event where we launched the Commission Engage African Americans on climate change, and talked about the importance of African Americans not just quote unquote having a seat at the table, but understanding the issues and weighing in on the concerns. This is a multi-sector commission. It includes everyone from a vice president of Exelon, which is a huge energy company that's got both nuclear and renewable energy interests, as well as the head of the NAACP, as well as Warren Washington, who's a top climate scientist, as well as the head of the American Public Health Association. So as you can imagine, it's 17 of them. You get people like that in the room who are all incredibly successful and incredibly busy, and this issue is so important to them that they said, "Sign me up." When the Joint Center came to them and said, "Let's start this commission." I want to highlight one particular issue that we're working on, where I'm hoping you might be able to help. I was thrilled to get engaged with the American Sustainable Business Council and to be on this panel, because we need different legs of the stool, every tool in the toolbox, whatever metaphor you want to use, to be able to make change. It's going to take policy as well as the innovators on the business side. And often what we see in Washington, Congresswoman Chakowski talked a little bit about it, are the businesses that say, hey, can we not bother about all this environmental sustainability stuff? We need jobs. Sometimes you even see certain African American businesses in particular saying, oh yeah, we know there are fancy jobs for those people with lots of money in Silicon Valley that have money to invest, but what about the rest of us that are just trying to get by and need those regular jobs, not those fancy green jobs? And so one of the things that we're trying to do is highlight the economic opportunities for African Americans when we find people like Faith that are in the sustainability world, that are in energy efficiency, that are in the renewable sector. We want to make sure that we put together a network that's going to both help those people be resources for each other. We were talking earlier about being the onlys in the room, sometimes the only ones, but also to make sure that those leaders are just busy working on their businesses, that they're connected to institutions like this and connected to each other, and we are helping them do the homework to figure out when to weigh in on key policy issues as they come up. And I'm going to toss it back to Faith here. When the EPA gets attacked, when we see these companies, that certain members of the Chamber of Commerce, etc., coming up, what they say is, look, you have this choice and it's fine, it's capitalism. If Wyndham wants to go do its thing, fine, go green. Leave us alone, because for our business, we'll not make money. And companies like Wyndham or the companies like the members in your group basically make a laughing stock of that argument. We have to figure out how to really elevate that, because they're saying we're doing all the green stuff and we're making a ton of money, and we're bringing even greater value for our shareholders. But that is not the dominant narrative that you hear pushing back in Washington. And this is where policy is a critical tool. Policy is going to make sure that everyone has to do it. And it's going to make it easier for companies that want to do it to be able to compete more effectively.